Lonely millionaire CEO is mistaken for a waiter by a single mom on a blind date. He could have corrected the mistake in seconds. One sentence would have been enough. But when the woman at the table softly asked for water, looking at him like he barely existed, Miles Carter felt something inside him pause. He had been standing near the counter, white shirt crisp, notepad in hand, reviewing numbers tied to millions of dollars. None of it mattered in that moment. What mattered was how easily she spoke, polite, tired, almost apologetic for needing something. Lauren Whitfield didn't ask like someone ordering service. She asked like someone used to shrinking herself to fit the world. Her smile came fast, but it was worn thin by long days and longer nights. Miles recognized that look, even if he didn't know why. If you believe in compassion and the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment to like and subscribe. Stories like this remind us how one small act can change everything. He glanced toward the real waiter behind the bar, then back at her. Instead of correcting her, instead of stepping back into who he was supposed to be, he chose something else. He chose to disappear, and that small, quiet choice was already changing everything, even if neither of them knew it yet. Miles Carter had built a life that looked solid, impressive, and complete from the outside, but inside, it felt strangely empty. As the CEO of a logistics tech company, his days were filled with meetings, forecasts, and decisions that moved money across screens and cities. People listened when he spoke and respected his authority without question. Yet none of that followed him into the quiet hours of his life. At night, his apartment felt too still, like it was holding echoes instead of warmth. Success had taught Miles how to function without slowing down long enough to feel. Schedules replaced conversations, and control replaced connection. The notepad in his hand that night wasn't about ambition anymore, but about safety. If everything stayed planned, nothing unexpected could reach him. He didn't call it loneliness, but it was easier to manage numbers than emotions. Lauren Whitfield lived a life that looked smaller, but carried just as much weight. Her world revolved around her young son, his school, his meals, and his sense of security. Since becoming a single mother, she'd learned how to be strong without asking for help. Every choice she made had another human attached to it. There was no room for mistakes, and very little room left for herself. The blind date wasn't about romance as much as it was about reclaiming a piece of her identity. She chose the restaurant because it felt neutral, safe, and simple, a place where expectations stayed low. Arriving early gave her control, and waiting alone felt easier than walking in late and being judged. Sitting at the table, she checked her phone, knowing silence already carried meaning. Still, she stayed. Across the room, Miles noticed her without understanding why. Something about the way she sat, steady but guarded, felt familiar. She looked like someone used to carrying disappointment quietly. He didn't know her story, but he recognized the posture of endurance. It made him pause longer than he intended. The restaurant itself felt suspended between movement and stillness. Soft lights, muted colors, the low hum of conversation filling the space without overwhelming it. It was the kind of place where people waited, not just for food, but for something unnamed. For Lauren, it was hope wrapped in caution. For Miles, it was an unexpected moment of stillness. Neither of them arrived expecting anything to change. They were simply trying to get through another evening without feeling more alone than necessary. But beneath that calm surface, something fragile was forming. A moment of connection waiting for the smallest push to become real. And that push was already closer than either of them realized. Lauren had been sitting there long enough to feel the weight of waiting settle into her shoulders. The longer she stayed, the more the room seemed to move around her instead of with her. When she finally looked up and noticed Miles standing near the counter, her mind filled in the gap without hesitation. He looked calm, focused, and like someone who belonged there. In that moment, it felt natural to assume he worked there. She didn't overthink it. She smiled politely and asked for water, her voice gentle and practiced, shaped by years of asking without demanding. There was no entitlement in the request, only courtesy mixed with quiet fatigue. Lauren didn't notice how small the ask was, but Miles did. He heard not just the words, but the way she said them, like she was careful not to inconvenience anyone. Miles felt the moment stretch longer than it should have. He knew exactly what she thought. and he knew how easily he could correct it. One sentence would have fixed everything, but instead of speaking, he noticed how being mistaken for ordinary made his chest feel lighter. For once, no one needed his authority or his answers. She just needed a glass of water. He turned toward the bar, carrying her request without comment. The real waiter handed him the glass without a second look, and the exchange passed unnoticed by everyone else. Yet for Miles, it felt strangely meaningful, like crossing an invisible line. When he brought the water back himself, he realized he'd already chosen not to step back into his role. Lauren thanked him automatically, then added that she was waiting for someone who hadn't arrived yet. She laughed softly, trying to make the disappointment sound casual. Miles nodded, listening more than responding, staying present in a way he rarely allowed himself. He lingered a moment too long, then stepped away, already aware that something had shifted. As he returned toward the counter, Miles understood that the night had taken a turn he hadn't planned for. The misunderstanding wasn't just about identity, it was about choice. He had stepped into invisibility on purpose, and that decision felt both unsettling and comforting. Across the room, Lauren checked her phone again, unaware that the smallest moment of kindness had already redirected both of their paths. Lauren stayed seated longer than she planned, even after realizing her blind date might not show up at all. Leaving felt heavier than waiting. Walking out alone always made things feel final, like admitting she had hoped for something she wasn't allowed to want. So she stayed, adjusting her posture, pretending to scroll through her phone while her thoughts spiraled quietly. She told herself she was fine, even though the familiar ache of disappointment pressed against her chest. Miles noticed the shift in her body language before she said anything else. It wasn't dramatic, it was subtle. Her shoulders dropped just a bit. Her smile faded into something more neutral, more guarded. He recognized that look immediately. It was the look people wore when they realized they were on their own again. He felt an unexpected pull to stay nearby, not out of curiosity, but concern he didn't yet understand. When he returned to her table under the excuse of checking if she needed anything else, Lauren surprised herself by speaking honestly. She mentioned that her date was running late, then added that maybe he wasn't coming at all. She laughed softly as she said it, the kind of laugh that tried to make rejection sound casual. Miles listened without interrupting, his attention fully on her, his notepad forgotten at his side. She didn't overshare, but she didn't hide either. She spoke about how hard it was to trust plans again after years of putting someone else first. She mentioned her son briefly, not as a story, but as context, as if explaining why hope felt risky. Miles felt the weight of her words settle slowly. This wasn't small talk. This was someone standing emotionally exposed without realizing it. For Lauren, talking felt strange and relieving at the same time. She wasn't trying to impress him. She thought he was just another worker passing through her night, someone who wouldn't carry her story forward. That safety made her honest. She admitted that coming out tonight had taken courage she almost didn't have. Saying it out loud made her throat tighten, but she didn't stop. Miles stood there, feeling something crack open inside him. He had spent years surrounded by people who needed things from him. Investors, employees, partners. None of them spoke the way Lauren did. None of them sounded like they were simply asking to be seen. In that moment, he wasn't helping her out of kindness alone. He was holding space because he needed it too. The restaurant seemed to fade into the background as their conversation deepened. The noise softened. The lights felt warmer. It was as if the world had narrowed to one table and two tired people sharing a pause they hadn't planned for. Miles forgot about time. Lauren forgot about embarrassment. Both of them existed fully in the present, something neither had done in a long while. Yet beneath that quiet connection, uncertainty hovered. Lauren still didn't know the truth about him, and Miles still hadn't decided how long he could stay invisible. The comfort they were building rested on fragile ground, and as calm as the moment felt, it carried the tension of something that couldn't last forever. Something was coming that would test what they were forming, and neither of them was ready for it yet. Lauren didn't mean to start talking the way she did, but once the first honest sentence left her mouth, the rest followed, like it had been waiting for years. She told Miles she almost canceled tonight, not because she didn't want love, but because she didn't trust her own hope anymore. She said being a single mom had trained her to expect disappointment before it arrived, so it wouldn't hurt as much. Her voice stayed calm, but her fingers kept tightening around the glass like it was the only steady thing in reach. Miles watched that small detail and realized she was braver than she sounded. Miles didn't answer right away, and that silence wasn't cold. It was careful. He was used to speaking in rooms where every word got weighed, repeated, and judged, so he'd learned to protect himself with distance. But Lauren wasn't asking him to impress her, and that made his usual mask feel pointless. He admitted, in the simplest way, that he understood what it felt like to show up somewhere and still feel alone. He didn't say CEO, he didn't say company, he didn't say numbers. He just said he'd been lonely for longer than he liked to admit. And Lauren's expression changed like she'd just met a real person instead of a role. That's when the night turned, not with a big moment, but with a gentle shift in power. Lauren stopped trying to be pleasant and started being present, like she could finally breathe without performing. She told him her son's name was Caleb, that he was sweet, and that he still asked why his dad didn't call, even though she tried to shield him from that hurt. She said she was tired of carrying two people's emotions while pretending she only had one heart. Miles didn't flinch, and that alone felt like kindness to her. Then she said something even harder, that she felt guilty for wanting a life outside motherhood, and the guilt had been eating her quietly. Miles felt the words land in him because he'd been living a different version of the same problem. He had money, status, and control, but he didn't have anyone who saw him without wanting something back. He told Lauren that people were always polite to him, but rarely sincere, and the more successful he became, the more invisible his real self felt. He kept his voice steady, but there was a strain underneath, like he was holding back something too heavy to show. Lauren listened like she wasn't trying to fix him, just understand him, and that was new for Miles. He realized he'd been starving for that kind of listening, the kind that didn't demand a performance. As minutes passed, Lauren checked her phone less and less, and not because she stopped caring, but because the waiting stopped being the center of the night. She told Miles that blind dates felt like job interviews, where you either passed or you wasted someone's time, and she was tired of feeling like a product. She admitted she had rehearsed jokes in the car, then felt silly the second she parked. Miles smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was honest, and honesty felt like warmth in that room. He asked her what she actually wanted, not from a date, but from life, and Lauren paused like no one had asked her that in years. When she answered, her voice got softer, and she said she wanted peace, the kind that doesn't disappear when the door closes. Then Miles did something that surprised even him. He stopped pretending he was fine. He told her he'd been living on autopilot, using work as a reason to avoid going home to silence. He said he didn't even know when he stopped calling friends back. It just happened one busy week at a time, until nobody called anymore. Lauren didn't pity him, and that mattered, because pity would have made him retreat. Instead, she nodded like she recognized the pattern, and she said loneliness could happen in a crowded room too. Miles felt seen in a way he wasn't prepared for, and he hated how much he needed it. The restaurant kept moving around them, servers passing, people laughing, plates arriving. But their table felt like its own little pocket of truth. Lauren confessed she was embarrassed to be sitting there alone, like everyone could tell she'd been stood up. Miles wanted to tell her she wasn't alone, but he didn't want to cross a line and turn this into a speech. So he did something simpler. He stayed, fully, without checking his watch, without looking for an excuse to leave. Lauren noticed that choice, and it started to heal something small inside her, because it meant her presence wasn't a burden. At the same time, Miles felt the danger in how good this felt, because good things always came with a cost for him. When Lauren finally looked at the entrance again, the seat across from her was still empty, and the truth of that hit her all at once. She tried to shrug it off, but her eyes watered anyway, and she hated herself for it. Miles leaned in slightly and asked if she wanted to leave, and Lauren surprised herself by saying she didn't know what she wanted anymore. She wasn't talking about the date. She was talking about the part of her that kept hoping even after being let down. Miles understood that too well, and his chest tightened because he knew he was holding a secret that could shatter this fragile safety. And just as he started to speak, a voice from the bar called out in a way that made Miles go still. The moment the bartender called out Miles's name, the air at the table shifted in a way neither of them could ignore. Lauren felt her stomach drop before her mind fully caught up, like she'd just stepped on ground that looked solid but wasn't. She watched Miles freeze for half a second, just long enough to confirm that something important had been hiding in plain sight. Her first instinct wasn't anger, it was embarrassment, sharp and immediate, the kind that makes you want to disappear. She wondered how foolish she must have looked, opening up to someone who hadn't even been honest about who he was. Miles turned back to her slowly, already feeling the weight of what this moment could cost. He explained, carefully and without defensiveness, that he never meant to deceive her, and that he understood how it might feel that way now. He told her he could have corrected her right away, but chose not to because being treated like an ordinary person felt like relief he didn't know he needed. He admitted that staying silent had been selfish and kind at the same time, and he didn't expect forgiveness for that choice. Lauren listened, arms crossed, not to shut him out, but to hold herself together. Lauren finally spoke, her voice steady but hurt underneath, saying she hated feeling small more than anything. She said tonight had already taken courage she almost didn't have, and the misunderstanding made her question her own judgment. She wasn't accusing him of cruelty, but she wasn't pretending it didn't sting either. Miles didn't interrupt, didn't justify, didn't try to smooth it over with charm or explanations. He simply let her say everything she needed to say, because he knew this wasn't about his status. It was about her dignity. When Lauren finished, Miles did something unexpected. He apologized without conditions. He didn't explain again who he was or what he owned or why his life was complicated. He apologized for letting her feel exposed while he stayed protected, even if that protection only lasted a short while. He told her she had every right to walk away, and that he wouldn't stop her if she chose to. Lauren looked at him, surprised by the lack of pressure, and that softened something she hadn't realized she was holding tight. Instead of leaving, Lauren asked a question she didn't plan to ask, which was why he stayed once he realized the truth would come out anyway. Miles answered honestly, saying he stayed because listening to her felt more real than anything he'd done in years. He said helping her wait, even silently, felt like the right thing to do in a world where people rarely slow down for each other. Lauren noticed that he wasn't asking her to take care of his feelings. He was owning his choices. That mattered more than she expected. From that point on, Miles shifted how he showed up at the table, no longer hiding, but not overpowering the space either. He ordered food for both of them only after asking what she wanted, not assuming, not performing generosity, just offering it. He asked if she wanted company or quiet, and meant both answers equally. Lauren realized that for the first time that night, she wasn't being managed or evaluated. She was being considered, and that felt healing in a way she couldn't explain. As they ate, Miles kept choosing presence over control, staying engaged even when the conversation turned heavy again. He listened when Lauren talked about the fear of raising a child alone, not the logistics, but the emotional weight of it. He told her he admired her strength, not as a compliment, but as an observation rooted in respect. Lauren felt something shift inside her, because admiration without expectation is rare. Yet part of her still held back, knowing that moments like this often fade once reality steps back in. By the time their plates were cleared, both of them sensed they were standing on fragile ground again. Lauren knew she had opened a door she usually kept closed, and she didn't know what would happen once she stepped outside the restaurant. Miles knew he was crossing lines he'd built to keep himself safe from disappointment. Neither of them named it, but both felt the same question hovering between them, whether this connection was meant to last or simply teach them something. And that unanswered question followed them closely as the night continued, refusing to let go. The conversation slowed after that, not because there was nothing left to say, but because both of them felt the weight of what had already been shared. Lauren leaned back slightly in her chair, her hands resting on the table instead of gripping her glass, and that small change told Miles she felt safer. She admitted that most nights she went home exhausted not from work, but from holding herself together for everyone else. Saying it out loud made her voice tremble, and she hated that it did, but she didn't pull away. Miles noticed and stayed steady, offering calm instead of solutions. Miles then made a choice that surprised even him, which was to share something he rarely spoke about. He told her that after years of building his company, He couldn't remember the last time someone asked how he was without an agenda attached. He explained that success had slowly turned into isolation, not all at once, but through 1,000